to Rapid plus TCT America Makes Game Day. I'm here with Bob, the head of SME, and we're here to kick off the event here at Rapid. So we just got done with the intro keynote presentations. That was fascinating.
Inspiring message from Kevin Zinger.
That was to see the scale at which they're doing things and how quickly we're advancing as a community, and what does it mean, and maybe most importantly how it's challenging what we've been able to do in the past. So you said something to me here recently about, to print is not to produce, and it's this phrase that's kind of stuck with me, and I think that's something we need to continue to explore as organizations who are leaders within this space. So, and what are you most excited about in kicking off Rapid 2023?
Oh my gosh, I hope we have some time. To me, a few things. Number one, just the level of interest shown by registrations, number of exhibitors, number of media on the floor, that pent-up demand to get back together to talk about really cool technology that's really taking the world on now. It's probably the first place I'd start. We have a record number of exhibitors, we have a record number of registrations, we have a record number of new exhibitors. More than 20% of our exhibitors this year are new, never been here before. So it just shows the continued growth in this industry and in this market.
Yeah, it was amazing. We were talking just before we started. I walked around earlier before anyone was here, as we were setting up. and to see all of the new organizations and so many new faces, I think that's something that is exciting for us as a community that we know, but I don't know that we pay enough attention to. I was recently at a conference for a conventional technology, and we were having a debate about additive versus whatever it might be. Sure. And one of the challenges or questions was, why does it seem to be different in additive manufacturing? That if you walk around this community, it's a much more diverse audience than, admittedly, I grew up with in engineering school.
Absolutely,
I think
agree.
It's exciting.
Yeah. I think the fallacy, if we're not careful though, is to think of additive as a discrete technology, as opposed to something that's part of a larger ecosystem to augment what we already have. I call it the hybrid idea. When I say to print is not to produce, generally in a industrialized, high manufacturing environment, we're not just going to print a part, box it, and ship it. It's going to be part of a hybrid ecosystem, a manufacturing ecosystem with post-processing requirements, maybe some subtractive in addition to additive. But that's, to me, the secret sauce, is figuring out that way to connect them all together. And what we see here is more of that. Look how busy it is. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. So I think we're seeing the enthusiasm and excitement build and grow as the realization of the opportunities, the limitless possibilities of this technology become more apparent.
Yeah, and I think it's when we think hybrid, it's on both ends. Pre-processing, post-processing, everything included.
Yes. We
don't use many components that utilize a singular operation for anything that we buy. And we've, maybe for a little too long as a technology, thought about where does additive fit in, and we think about the numbers of steps that it replaces, and it certainly does. But it also has to be integrated in, and I think that's one of the most interesting things as you walk around the floor. Just looking here, I'm looking at a testing house, a materials company, a software company, somebody who's developing new materials, EDM, there are things that have to be integrated into what we're doing in order to make what we're doing interesting to the rest of the
I agree, and I think the upfront work that's done in design optimization is really critical as well. Don't start with a part and tell me, go find a way to make it an additive. Start with an opportunity to optimize an entire design structure. Take advantage of what additives can do. Think in 3D, linear, non-linear, think of it in that way. And I think that's where we have an education element, but we also have a re-education element as part of our challenges going into continuing to allow this industry to grow.
It was at dinner last night, I was having prior to the show starting, having a conversation of just the realities of the size of the incumbent workforce that exists that was trained in a particular way or discipline or for a particular job, versus the workforce that's coming up through the system right now, and the reality that their needs are different.
Yes.
And that's okay. And I think, what we're, at the same time, when we think about re-education, there is currently, far too often we do direct part replacement, and it may make sense for a particular use case, but it doesn't scale up that well.
Oh, I agree, and I don't think the ROI in that approach alone is going to allow us to make the progress we hope to see in this industry. Yeah. I think you have to get back to the fundamentals of what we're trying to accomplish. Don't come with a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah. Exactly, and I think if you look across the 3 days that are the show, there's a number of interesting panels and different talks that are taking place that are exploring that, whatever you want to call it, whether it's the business case side of it or the life cycle assessment, whatever it might be. We're starting to see, there's awareness and education related to that as well that we need to get more people to understand in order to realize the capability.
No doubt about it. We have close to 300 speakers, knowledge bars, technology hubs, technical conferences, with a good percentage of the attendees coming to Rapid that also work through and attend the technical conferences. Design, development, testing, from basic, I'll call it rudimentary, entry-level, additive manufacturing type approaches, all the way up to the more senior level, high-ended approaches. And so the idea is Rapid in and of itself, it's a trade show, absolutely. Look on the floor. It's an expo, it absolutely is. It's a series of technical communities that come together to do technical conferences. All the other activities, there's a knowledge bar, there's a technology hub. The idea is just to do that. It's create awareness to all that it can be, in addition to allowing OEMs. I think there's 200 new products being unveiled this week. So it's an ecosystem on the floor.
Yeah, listening this morning at the kickoff of the various different announcements that are coming out and the big releases that are taking place. It's exciting. You walk around and there's actually a couple taking place right now as we're doing this.
I can hear them, yeah.
And have seen the emails come through so far this morning of releases that have come out. I think it's very exciting for us as a community to be in the position where we really are today. We've really seen a transition to industrialization over the last couple of years.
I feel like you can feel it, right? Terry Woller's report has come out, 18% growth again in 23, and it's not going to stop, right? You might find it interesting that the top 4 industries that our registrations reflect here, this year medical is the highest industry, reflected of those who are coming on board. It's not always been that way. Automotive, aerospace, and I'll call it general are the 4 key areas, but this year medical's on top. So it's fascinating to see where that's growing. And when you think about it, that means as you look around, probably 1 out of every 3 you see may be from medical. So an interesting and new growing element. You asked me a question I thought I'd come back to. So what excites me, or what's exciting about Thing, is I'm looking around here, I see it, that's why I brought it up. So we have our Bright Minds program, which is a series of high school students that come in and be a part of a curated experience for them, very specifically here. About 300 each day will come. We've created, as part of our show app, a curated experience for the kids, very specifically, and only for them, which is a gamified approach to walk the show floor, visits very specific exhibitors, ask the exhibitors, it's like a treasure hunt. The exhibitors ask them technology-focused questions, and if they answer, they get points. And in the end, the winning teams, well, they win some additive-related prizes. You might guess what those are. So the idea, you can see some of the kids running around now, visiting the exhibitors, they're part of the show, they're part of the technology, and they're learning more about it. That excites me.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that we see regularly. We have similar mission spaces. We're both trying to, as organizations, looking to grow this community.
Absolutely.
It's about increasing adoption. How can we, whatever the use case is for, it's about how can we create education and awareness around it such that we're able to increase adoption ultimately. And we focus on tech development, education, and workforce development, and what we call ecosystem development. I think you kind of hit on it a minute ago. They're kind of the main components of how the event is structured. It's not just a trade show.
Right. I'll say this much. Last night we had an appreciation dinner for the volunteers that helped put this together for us. Technical community volunteers. There was over 60 of them there. So we did a little celebration event last night. They're so deeply ingrained and evolved in doing conference content and doing just show floor layout, doing all of that in support. We couldn't do it without them. And so when you talk about lifting the ecosystem, you've got a group of very dedicated, engaged volunteers helping support the growth of this industry and helping to support the growth of Rapid, which we're continuing to see.
And I think that's something that we all need to do. There was some comments about it earlier today, but the community overall is very collaborative. I think we're
like I've never seen. Yeah.
There's a different feeling when you come to the show and start to talk to people about what they do, what they care about, what they're working on, and how can we do that together? I mean, I think between our organizations, and ourselves, we regularly work on those items. It's not about somebody winning. It is about ultimately all of us.
And that's the measuring stick with which we use to say, is SME successful in advancing our mission forward, which is around advancing technology to another level and helping develop that skilled workforce of the future. And so we really value partnerships along many, many lines, but including and very much about our partnership with America Makes. We've been partners for many, many years. And I think our missions overlap in terms of what we do, how we do it, the sharing that we do with each other, especially in education and workforce development.
Absolutely, and I think we've been able to work very closely together on things because we need each other, and we see this with a lot of organizations that we collaborate with, in that we may be strong at something that your organization doesn't focus as much on, and vice versa. But
sure.
there is a key to all of this. We're all trying to grow faster than we are today. We all ultimately want to move the ball more quickly. And I think one thing that we've missed, but I see coming on pretty strong over the last couple of years, if we think about this idea of industrialization, is that demand signal coming in from the industrial community across. So when you think of those different sectors that you talk about, that is, we all understand, I think, the path for AM for aerospace and defense, but to now start to get a better understanding of how and where and what could we be using this for is, starts to help all of us get a better understanding.
And I like to use the word ecosystem because it truly is, from one end to the other. Material development, material characterization, and material standards development. Is it the same material that's going to be used in a human body part replacement, as a rotor inside a jet engine? Is it the same material, characterized the same way? Then we look at digital threads and digital twins that go into the process side, advanced process development in different ways. I'd like to believe it's it's industry agnostic, but I'm not sure it is. So I really think we need to work together as an industry to do that. Now we talk about material suppliers, we talk about equipment suppliers, design houses, but we're none of that. But we're all of that, and that's where I say collaboration really happens when we trust each other and when we understand how we help advance each other's missions. And I feel that that's where this industry goes. The community feeling here is like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I similarly, coming from a different industry, it's a very different environment, but you can, I think, it has driven the success that we've seen. We're ultimately trying to beat a trajectory that, we imagine, or we've seen other technologies take. I mean, it's not that different than some other new technologies that have been developed over the past decades. We're not willing to accept that. It's kind of where we're at right now. And I think the power is everyone is coming together to actually try to make that happen. And it's not necessarily
this is a great example of that.
Winning or lose, who wins and loses. It's just to make sure that we all ultimately
we all win, right? It's that rising tide lifts all boats analogy, and I believe that. I mean, I think that we're getting there. You feel it in additive. You feel a buzz. Every year, I've been in additive for 15 years, and this is the year I feel more than ever any other year.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree, and it's very early on in the show, but I think even what we're seeing happening all around us, I remember talking, in the past with you, Rapid is an instance in time that takes place over a few days, that takes a lot to lead up to it, and a lot comes out of it on the back end, but it's ultimately the collaboration that exists throughout, and engagement that we see in the ecosystem across, 365 days of the year.
Well, and that's the goal. So even, I wasn't going to talk about, we have a program called Event Live. It's the digital experience, the curated digital experience for someone who comes here, for example. We're live streaming most of this event. We're also recording, and if you've signed up for the conferences, you have the availability to download them and watch them for a year. And the idea is Rapid 365 would be a full year-long experiential experience as opposed to a 3-day discrete experience. And so one of our guys said, I get the t-shirt and I wear it all year for the rock band I go see once a year. Yeah. It's a funny analogy, but it's real true. It really makes sense. So
yeah, no, that is true. And I think it's, as we see, when we think of where we're at and where we're trying to go, we talked a little bit about education. I think that's a key component of where we're at. Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the different events either that are taking place here at Rapid plus TCT, plus TCT this week, versus just what SMEs engaged with moving the community forward?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the great question, because it applies both to here at Rapid, where we have a fairly large, well-developed conference program I alluded to earlier. We actually have 8 different tracks here at industry-based focus and tracks here at Rapid. So those who come here and want to get educated more on the technology and understand how to apply it can absolutely find that here. But outside of that, our Tooling USME group, our learning and development group, has a large focus in additive manufacturing. We have very specifically developed online and instructor-led content from the basics or the beginning of, I'll call it additive 101, all the way up to some very high technology, very discrete type application development. So we deliver those online, we deliver them in an instructor-led, and I'll say over recent times, because it's not an exacting number we track, but we've delivered it over 55,000 times. So we've educated 55,000 people based on Tooling USME specific content in additive manufacturing. So it's a huge focus for us.
Is it a individuals take this, or is it, do you work with organizations where they, you train 100 people within an organization?
So individuals can, but I'll tell you from a scale standpoint, we try and focus at the corporation because we feel scale-wise we can impact more people. So it's 55,000 discrete trainings that were done through corporation primarily, and I think Janine will talk about this as well, but this is a big focus of ours because it's how can we impact the most people. And what you'll see in our zone here at the show as well is we're now working on VR, AR training development tools and activities, and there's very specific additive focus around some of that as well. So we like to say you can't break a finger in VR, that you might learning how to put a die together, as an example. So
yeah, no, and I've seeing how it's been interesting. Additive regularly gets coupled with other advanced manufacturing technologies that come out, for a variety of reasons. It is purely, or natively digital, so it makes sense.
100%.
It's also a fantastic, gateway or connection to other advanced manufacturing technologies that you can see. I've seen AR and VR from both sides. How do you train, the youth in a particular capability, and then, like you said, you can't smash a finger putting a die together.
We've had a very surprising, I'll call it aha moment about VR AR training though, because we thought generally the younger demographic would be more interested in it, and they very much are. But what we found is, I'll call it the more experienced, John, type demographic that we might represent are equally interested in it. We thought they might shy away from it. Absolutely the opposite. It's fun to watch these guys put on Oculus headsets and what they do with it, and that was a pleasant surprise that we didn't expect.
I've had that own personal realization of doing that both personally and at different facilities, walking through and imagining myself, going through a small confined space, and certainly not wanting to do that. But
no, but even in VR and AR, you learn now, right? So simple things like how to put a fire out, how to do a 5S or a lockout tagout, some simple things, but it's amazing how many people you can influence and touch with that type of approach. And so we're incorporating that, I'll call it cutting edge technology, into some of our additive space as well.
And I think what else is, in that same space is bringing those two communities together. So there is, we have been around for a little while and have different experiences that someone that's coming in new that sees the technology differently. But at the same time, there's, we have a much better appreciation and understanding of the application space.
Yeah.
So when you see these two things merge together, it's fascinating just to see, honestly, the interactions that you see in conversations when you walk around here to talk about, this is my problem. How can you help me? What is it that you do?
I'm hearing that question. It's getting busier. I'm hearing that question from people. Though. Here's what I'm trying to accomplish, or here's the problem I'm trying to address, as opposed to, geez, everybody's getting into 3D printing. I better do this.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. Understand the value that it creates for you first, which is, I think, the sign of maturity in our industry.
Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting point you bring up. I think it's something again, had this conversation, yesterday leading into this in a pre-meeting, that the conversation has shifted some. I remember a few years ago, and it was only a few years ago, when there were still too many stories about, I bought the fill-in-the-blank system, and I
know where
X,
you're going.
Y, Z dollars, and it's either in the corner, or I don't know how to use it, or the person that brought it on board isn't here anymore.
Exactly.
And that seems to be shifting.
I do. I believe it's shifting as well. And it was, somebody said, buy it because we have to have one. Now we're saying, well, what can it do for us? And I think also, though, there's more applications that are opening up, such that they may now be able to employ that very piece of equipment they weren't sure what to do with in the past.
Yeah, so. I think the concept, I pretty regularly use this word, but the idea of maturity is something that we're, I think, addressing. We had historically been, watch how I say it, but there's a lot of tech development that's taking place, and we've been I'm trying to convince you why you need my item, because it was where we were at, and I think that's changed.
I characterize it like this: additive can't be purely a technology push; it should be an application pull. The application can't be used, can't make it any other way except additive, is what I would classify as simple application pull, as opposed to, John, go find a way to use this technology. And I think that the industry is shifting in that way, to an application pull type approach.
Yeah, get away from the, we're going to make X hundred parts this way by this time.
Yes, because somebody told us.
Because somebody told me it's important. And I think it's, all levels of organizations are maturing, and I think it's not only good for us, I think it is a sign that we are moving forward and having a better understanding of where and how and when to use the technology. And I think events like this are critically important, so people can see, because what was true last year isn't necessarily true this year either.
I agree. And you think of the networking that occurs here, even the evening networking event we have tonight and others, where people just get to build relationships with each other. They may be buyer-seller relationships, they may just be collaborative relationships.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's why we come to an event like this.
Glad you're here.
Certainly appreciate it. Certainly appreciate our partnership over the years and continued moving forward.
John.
Thanks,
thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on this morning, talking about Rapid, and it's an exciting day. Come down and see Rapid if you're not here.
Yeah, you should get here. It's going to be a great 3 days.
Excellent. Thanks again.